You know the Tigers won again. You know the Tigers won again. For real. You know the Tigers won again.
Except for today. Hey, folks, welcome into Church Pew Sports. We're back. It's been a while. Good to have you with us. It is June, and we have been really, really busy away from these microphones, and it's taken a Herculean effort to rally the troops and bring everybody together for a Saturday night recording session, but we wanted to do it because there's so much that is transpiring and has transpired in the world of sports and in our personal lives as well. And so to get things started, Bill Hobson here, joined by David Collins, by Scott Holmgren, and by Pastor Paul Miller, who got to sleep in his own bed maybe last night for the first time in a while. I don't know what the balance looks like between other beds and hotels and your own bed in the last 30 days. What's it look like?
It's about a 50-50 deal right now, Bill. That's just been the rhythm. And so I'm glad to be back home. I'm glad to be back in Minneapolis. We'll call it one of the homes. And I'm looking forward to going to bed tonight and sleeping well.
Well, I would encourage everybody here at the very outset of the program to do us all and yourself a favor and stick around for the entire conversation, because we're going to talk personal stuff at the end of this show, and we'll save it till then. We want to give everybody some laughs and some sports talk and some release and relief from reality. You know, this is the toy box of life. So here we are in this weird time. We're talking baseball at the very outset. We're in this weird time. Earlier today, as we record this Saturday evening on June 7th, earlier today, the two best teams in baseball had the second of their 3-game series. That would be the Tigers and the Cubs, which is not a sentence we would have uttered it would have been quite a while since we last said that. So Scott Holmgren, how surprised are you that we are in that situation in June?
Well, I checked the calendar. It's not 1945, so something has changed, right? That was the last time the Cubs and Tigers faced off in the World Series. But, I was hopeful for the Cubs this year. I really didn't know what to expect from the Tigers, but that the AL Central Division is kind of open. You know, they had a lot of good teams last year. Guardians may have taken a step back. The Royals are always tough. The Twins are tough. The White Sox are who they are. And, I was pleasantly surprised. I've been rooting for the Tigers all along, for sure.
Well, so have we. David Collins I think you had a choreographed dance to the Tigers fight song that I played a moment ago. And I would guess you also have some choreographed response to moments like this.
On a 103-mile-an-hour fastball, Tarek Skubal's 13th strikeout.
We are seeing amazing things happen from the arm of Tarek Skubal. I'm sure you've got some stats, David. His strikeouts to walk ratio is historic. So celebrate with us. Bring everybody into Tigerland right now.
Yeah, I mean, if you're talking about the team as a whole, you're looking at there's no true superstars on this roster outside of Tarek Skubal, but you have players that can fit every situation. You have a manager who knows how to put the right guys in the right spots to get the right results. You saw yesterday, Jahmai Jones called up, first pitch he sees as a call-up, it's a home run. It's pretty amazing what you're seeing. But as you stated on the outset, Tarek Skubal is at this point generational. Like we used to look at Verlander like this, and the numbers he's putting up are better. It's insane. The last 2.5 years, over his last 11 starts, he has 95 strikeouts and 3 walks. 95 strikeouts and 3 walks. What is that? And the fact that you've got a lefty who can throw 100 with the most devastating changeup in all of baseball, it's unbelievable. And so help me, Chris Ilitch. Look at me right here, Chris Ilitch, in the camera. Look at me.
He's a big listener.
You don't pay that man. If you don't pay that man, we are going down there and we are going to find you, and you are selling that team to me, and I'll pay him with whatever I've got. And I don't have much, but I will give it to him. All right? This is like the fans will riot on a biblical level if he does not pay Tarek Skubal, and they rightfully should. But overall, and here's the thing. I'm happy that the Cubs are having success as well, because I hate the Dodgers. I hate the Yankees. I hate a lot of teams. I don't hate the Cubs. The Cubs kind of mirror us in a lot of ways. Like there's a lot going there, and their team's built really similarly. They have strong starting pitching, sometimes from guys you don't even recognize. I can't remember the guy's name who pitched yesterday. Ben, was it Brown or whatever?
Ben Brown, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he was fantastic, and so they're getting results from guys, and Pete Crow Armstrong coming out and just having almost an MVP type year. I look at the Cubs and I'm actually happy for them. This series, I was so looking forward to it. I actually got some friends to watch the game yesterday because it was Apple TV, like, and it was their first time watching the Tigers this season, and they loved every second of it because Skubal was on the mound dealing. It was timely hitting, and then today, obviously, things went the other way. So now we get a nice rubber match for the weekend. Like, what could you ask for that's better than this? Baseball that matters this late in the season.
So as David calls out Chris Ilitch, Paul, I'll come to you because David's not wrong, but the Ilitch, the son of Mike Ilitch, Chris Ilitch, has shown a track record for not spending to the degree that's going to be needed to keep Tarek Skubal. Now, some would argue, should you give anybody $400-500 million
Probably five.
for the next, 8 years when arms don't last that long? So, Paul is a guy who's kind of loosely diving into the baseball world.
Yes.
What's your position on that kind of commitment to a generational player?
Well, like you said, Bill, I'm marginally connected to baseball during the regular season, but I wanted to ask David a follow-up question, and really it's for David or Scott, because of the three guys you have on this phone call, one of the three of us is not very knowledgeable about baseball, but clearly, bro, as you were talking, there must be a track record of the Tigers not paying pitchers who leave and go on and do well elsewhere. So I guess my question is, I'm just assuming that, am I right? Or
Yes.
is there reason to think that this is going to happen again this year?
The main issue is, and if you look back at Tigers teams in the past, Max Scherzer was a Tiger. He left and won a World Series with the Nationals. Verlander was a Tiger. He left and won with the Astros. Rick Porcello was a Tiger. He went and won a Cy Young, which was a garbage Cy Young, by the way.
I don't know
Verlander was
that.
better than him in every statistical category outside of wins, which is not a pitcher stat. But no, it's once the Miguel Cabrera deal finally has come off the books, the issue is that Chris Ilitch hasn't shown that he's willing to put money into the team. Everyone on the roster is homegrown, except for a couple guys. And the guys he went out and got, like Alex Cobb this offseason, which he paid money to, probably won't pitch for us one time, and he's going to make like $30 million or whatever it is. He's been extremely cheap with this roster, and so there is a huge amount of fear that he's not going to pay the one guy. I heard people talking about, hey, we should give up some of our prospects and go get Paul Skeens because he's unhappy in Pittsburgh. And I like, my only response to that is, we're not even going to pay Skubal. Like, we're definitely not going to pay Skeens too. Like, I would rather have the guy we got because he's the best in the game and to pay him the money. But as Bill said, you're talking about $450-500 million because he's got Scott Boras as his agent. So I mean, that's just kind of par for the course.
So is that a Tigers thing or is that a baseball thing?
It's a Chris Ilitch thing because his dad
Okay.
before him had Mike Ilitch had one of the highest paid teams in all of baseball when we had Miguel and Victor and just Prince Fielder was in there. It's just like we had such a loaded roster and they overpaid to try to get him a title before he passed. He got the title with the Red Wings in 2008 when they beat Pittsburgh, but he never quite got the title with the Tigers. But he overpaid for so long on such long contracts that his son came in and basically has done the exact opposite. He's grown the team, homegrown the team way better with Scott Harris and some of these draft picks, but he hasn't spent money to actually bring in talent or keep talent. And so this is kind of the first big one. So we're all kind of waiting to see what's going to happen.
Yeah, and Scott, I don't know if it's accurate or fair to say that this season Skubal has taken the hometown discount because he could have made quite a fuss over after he wins the Cy Young. He could have said, hey, guys, I'm no longer going to pitch for what was essentially a bargain basement in baseball term salary. Are we in a world where only the Yankees and Dodgers can write these checks anymore?
I don't know. It was interesting listening to you talk about the Tigers. The Cubs were similar, right? Because that's been the problem with the Ricketts family is they never would go out spend the big bucks. Even this year when they went and got their biggest signing and they brought in Kyle Tucker from Houston, he's going to be a free agent at the end of the year. So it's kind of a wonderful 1 year deal. When was the last time the Cubs went out and signed a big pitcher? John Lester, right? Well, in that worked the one time that it did. Shota Imanaga, they kind of got on a great deal, but he's a foreign player, and sometimes that works out, sometimes it doesn't. I think it would take some creativity in some of the other big cities because again, the Cubs are not a small market team. The Tigers are not a small market team. They're not Milwaukee. They're not Arizona. They're certainly not Colorado. They're not Miami. There's plenty of other small market teams. It's this idea of the creative financing. That's the thing that really is like, I can't quite wrap my brain around when they do all the deferments and they push the money down the road. And I don't know if we've seen enough of that other than the joke that we make every year on Bobby Bonilla Day, when everybody remembers Bobby Bonilla is still getting paid $1 million, right? And he hasn't played in however many years. Does that economic model work? Will it work and will it pay out? And it's going to take some while to see the ramifications of that, of the recent deals that have been done. So I don't know. I wish there was a little more creativity in the financing side because I think everybody could do it. I mean, the one team that stands out to me is the Padres, right? Because a few years ago, they went all in. They spent boatloads of money and they kept saying, oh, it's going to bankrupt the team. There's no way they can sustain it. And slowly, they still have Machado. They still have Tatis. They signed Xander Bogaerts, but now Soto's gone. And you're wondering, who's going to come see them play? Well, guess what? They're still filling Petco Park. It's a very strange model, and I don't know if we quite know the end of that story, Bill. It's remains to be seen, but I think a lot more teams could do it who aren't doing it.
Yeah. Just one note to tack on to what you said, Scott, about the Tigers not being a small market team. Absolutely, the city of Detroit is a major city. However, for each of the major league markets that have a local agreement with a FanDuel sports network, which is owned by Diamond Sports, Diamond Sports, which is owned by Sinclair Broadcasting, and as we've said before in this podcast, whatever Sinclair touches turns to fecal matter. Diamond Sports has filed bankruptcy. And for instance, in the case of the Tigers, they were supposed to receive, I believe it was $60 million a year in rights fees. Because of the bankruptcy proceedings, they're going to get less than 30. Now, to you and I, as we talk about these big, crazy, many comma numbers in the world of sports, we think, well, all right, 60 to 30, that's one shortstop. Well, no, that's also potentially one Cy Young winner. That's considerable revenue. Now, this weekend series against the Cubs, it's standing room only. It's not always going to be that way because people have lives. So there is a possibility that part of the willingness or, I don't know, impetus for signing a player to a deal that's generational might come back to, we don't know what, if I'm in the Ilitch seat, and believe me, I am not defending Chris Ilitch's track record, but he might have a very valid reason for saying, we really don't know what rights fees are going to look like. And that is a major part of their revenue stream. So part of this whole concern, at least from my perspective, as somebody who has a show on FanDuel Sports, is that it may not be around. And so Major League Baseball is exploring the idea of taking over all of these regional broadcasts. And I don't know what that would mean by rights fees. And I'm not smart enough to be a billionaire, but there are some of these factors in here that you could set aside if you're a fan, like I am, like David is, and say, listen, I don't care. You're still selling a lot of pizzas and that horrendous cardboard quality crazy bread. So use some of that money and sign this guy, and do not let us go through again the scar tissue left behind by the Verlander, Scherzer, Porcello, Fister departures of everybody who went on, as David said, to win everything. And that's not even my holy discontent, but that's just getting me started. So, okay. So Paul, umpiring is horrendous. Do you miss the days where you could have a good old manager nose to nose fiery Joe West and Earl Weaver kind of a argument over things, and now it's all kind of automated. It's not automated, but it's kind of hard to argue because you get tossed the moment that you do. Because I'm missing those moments because at home you're having them with your TV after you see an egregious ball or strike call.
Yeah, that's so interesting that you direct that question to me, because I watched the last 3-4 innings of the Cubs Tigers game today, and then one of you guys sent a link to an article about how bad the home plate umpire was. So I'm watching the game, and here's what I'm finding myself doing. I don't watch that much baseball, but I'm watching the game, and if the ball is even out a little bit outside that box that's on the screen now, right? I feel like I could be calling the game. So that's the thing I'm paying more attention to than anything else. And so I was getting frustrated when all those pitches where it looked like they were 4 or 6 inches above the strike zone, they were still getting called strikes or anything else. And a majority of them were going against the Cubs and yada, yada, yada. I'm watching the game and I'm thinking to myself, would I enjoy this more if that box wasn't on the screen?
Yes, you do.
I just was asking myself that question. And I actually think I would have, because I wouldn't have been so worried about the balls and the strikes calls. I would have just been wondering if the guy was going to swing and if he was going to make contact or whatever. So I don't know what you guys who watch way more baseball than I do. I don't know how you feel about that, but that was my observation just from this afternoon catching the back half of the Cubs Tigers game. I don't know that I have an answer, but and yeah, well, the other answer to your question is yes, I miss it when all the crazy fights gone, because that's fun. We have the NHL playoffs going on right now, but the guys don't fight as much in the playoffs, which is a bummer.
You still have to be able to kick dirt on home plate and force the umpire to come and clean it off.
Yeah.
This was Tigers play-by-play voice Jason Benetti describing a called third strike that went against the Cubs. This is how bad it was. The Tigers announcer realized how bad the call was.
1-2. Strike 3 called in the vicinity of the outside corner.
And
In the vicinity.
he wasn't wrong. It really was.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So Scott, you watch more baseball than I do, and you and David both do. So is it as bad as I think it is?
That's been my holy discontent for a year, more than a year, is that little box on the screen, Paul. It's like, take it away. Every single person watching that game knows whether it's a ball or a strike, except for the guy who's supposed to call whether it's a ball or a strike. At that point, it's like, get rid of it or implement the ABS system, because again, one way or the other, it's taking away from the action on the field, taking away from the rest of the game. You're fixated on this one horrible or judgment call. Think about judgment calls in all sports across the full range of sports. Mm-hmm. What other sport has a judgment call every minute of the game, one after another, after another, after another? To me, it's like that sort of gets around the point of it. The technology's there. We can do better. I'm becoming more of a fan for the ABS, especially since they tested it in spring training. I don't think that little box helps anybody enjoy the game more.
So in spring training, a batter could request a review by patting his helmet. Is a strange solution they came up with, which Taylor Walls is he Florida? Where is he? I think he's in Florida.
Is he on the Rays, Tampa Bay?
On the Rays, thank you. I don't know if he remembered the patting of the helmet thing or not, but he did, in readjusting his helmet, apparently tap it onto his own head. Listen to the things we're talking about here in the toy box of life. The guy's wearing a hard protective shell on his head. He touched it improperly, apparently, and this happened.
Runner stayed in the game. Will bat here for the first time. And he looks at a pitch on the outside corner at the knees. Walls didn't like that call. It's 0-1. Walls is the only active Tampa Bay Rays hitter with a hit in his career against Hader. He's 1 for 4.
I think he just threw him out. He tapped his helmet. I saw that. He tapped his helmet.
Taylor Walls is going to get ejected from this game. Taylor Walls got ejected after a discussion with Nick Lentz, and he is infuriated.
That would be an understatement. In fact, Paul, we did get treated to a little bit of the type of argument that I was describing. So, David, in the world, what are we doing here?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think the ABS system is absolutely essential because there are too many times when a really bad call on a ball or strike can totally change the outcome of a game. A pitcher's struggling and then he gets that call that's, 4 inches outside, and then all of a sudden he's back in a count and finds his rhythm again and strikes the guy out when it should have been a walk to load the bases. There's just too many situations where it's too clear and obvious to the naked eye to look and go, that's just a bad call. I saw one the other day where an ump was leaning on the right hand, or on the catcher's right shoulder side, like all the way to the right shoulder side, and a pitch goes outside on the other side, and he calls it a strike. And it's like, how can you possibly have any vantage point as to whether or not that went over the plate when you're shaded all the way over here and the ball? So I mean, the box, I understand that it gets, especially from my friends that are like real, seam heads, like baseball guys. A buddy of mine used to pitch in college. He thinks that everything that everybody does is, or thinks about baseball, is wrong. He hates the box because he thinks that it makes fans lock in and go, well, this game's easy to call. Whereas, from what I understand, the box is there, and it's from like 120 at bats. They aggregate what your strike zone is, and that's supposedly what the box represents per batter, which means that generally the calls that are called balls and strikes are within that box. But as anybody who's played baseball would know, the umpires have tendencies, the pitchers need to learn those tendencies, and the game takes on an entirely different feel but then again, then you sit there and you have Angel Hernandez, or you have these guys who ump games, and they cannot call a ball or strike correctly. So, I mean, I don't know. I get rid of the box, don't get rid of the box. I just think the simple thing is the ABS system. If it's an egregious call, you tap the head, we go on. It's like tennis. Tennis figured it out a long time ago. Like, everybody claps and then the computer said it was in, so it's in, and we all move on with our lives.
And in tennis, it takes about 3 seconds.
Exactly. And that's the ABS system when working correctly. That's all it takes. Tap the head, they go to the monitor. Oh, looks like it hit the zone, strike, or looked like it missed, out. That's the only thing we can do at this point, because I don't think you'll ever get fully rid of behind the plate umpires, as much as a robot strike zone would fix a lot of this stuff. I just don't think we'll ever get rid of that. The union's way too strong. So we're going to always have them. But if we can find a way to keep them at least in check somewhat, I think that that's the best solution.
Yeah. Scott, so away from umpiring, baseball in general, biggest storyline of the season so far from your perspective is what?
Oh my, I would say, how the heck are the Dodgers still in first place after losing 15 pitchers to the IL? That's a major storyline. How come, the Mets, why is Juan Soto not the superstar that he was paid to be? Right. And how come the White Sox aren't the worst team in baseball anymore? How about that one? Did you see the fact that the Rockies are on a pace, I think, to finish like 20 games worse than the White Sox, who had a historically worse season?
Wow.
So, I mean, the main stories in baseball, I think, I like the fact that things seem to be shaking up. Some of the typical teams aren't doing so hot, like the Braves. The Braves got off to a horrible start at the beginning of the year. For me, the big storyline is there enough pitching available from teams that will be sellers to help reinforce the teams that are desperate for it? So like the Cubs, we lost 2 top line starters. Every team could use more pitching. And the question is which teams kind of in that squishy middle part of the standings will be sellers, and then which pitchers will have targets on them for acquisition at the trade deadline.
And is there a collection of violin sympathy music for the Dodgers, who have a payroll matching the GDP of most mid-sized nations around the world, and injuries happen no matter what you're paid, right? I mean, it just can happen.
Hey, pretend I don't know when the trade deadline is. Is that?
That's at the end of July 30th,
okay.
31st. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you for pretending that for Paul and maybe some others here on the
Paul knew when it was. He just wanted to make sure other people knew.
helping us. By the way,
He's a good host.
There's a podcast that I think David and I listen to regularly that has set out on a mission of having their listeners, and their listeners are in the millions, elect as many Colorado Rockies to the All-Star team as possible. And they find that it would be a rather special moment if the NL All-Star team was populated with members from the worst team in all of baseball. So, okay, so baseball, there you go. Next up, kind of flying under the radar here in late May, early June, we get an NCAA settlement. There was seismic news made in the world of, I will use air quotes, student athletes. I'm not going to read all of it, but here are some of the highlights. The settlement negotiated by the plaintiffs seeking back NIL pay has three main parts: $2.8 billion in back pay to ex-athletes, $20 billion in revenue sharing to future athletes, new roster rules, a new enforcement arm, and then we can dig into the finer points of it all. But David, I'm going to let you take the first crack at this. What just happened, and why aren't more people paying attention to it?
No, I think it's a really good time for them to come out with any news on this subject, because you have the NBA finals going, you have the Stanley Cup finals going, you have baseball starting to get into full swing. I'm not entirely certain. I haven't researched this as much as I've researched some of the stuff in the past. I know that just recently there was a ruling where schools are now allowed to directly pay student athletes, which just came out recently, which is another fascinating concept, because as much as we want to think that we have any of this nailed down in any capacity, I still think it's the Wild West as to who's actually going to be in charge. But when you have all these situations where they're back paying people, and it just means that somebody's been withholding money, somebody's been not letting people get paid what they should get paid. It's just this entire system of being shady just keeps getting exposed for being shady. And everything we find out is just a new example of like, oh, we could have been doing that this whole time, or, oh, they should have been doing that this whole time. And somebody's just been greedy in the middle. Yeah, that's what I've been saying from the beginning. There's a few people that have been really greedy, and they're starting to get exposed for it. And now all of a sudden these little solutions start coming up. And it makes total sense to me that the finger continues to point at the NCAA and the people that have run it.
Yeah, dude, I think we're taking steps in a direction that you have been advocating for, because a big part of the House NCAA settlement was revenue sharing of like 22% of the average revenue of a Power 4 school, which adds up to just over $20 million per university that people can pay, that schools can pay directly to their athletes, and they get to decide, does 19.5% of that go to football players or basketball players or however they want to do that. So there's that. The funny thing to me about it, that's in theory supposed to level the playing field, but it doesn't take NIL out of the equation. So the NCAA has put this governing body in place that's supposedly going to review every NIL deal that's over $600. How do you think that's going to go?
That'll be a blast. That'll be a blast, I'm sure, because all of them. And let me just add to what you said. I think that the reason they did this with the revenue sharing from the schools to actual players is a remedy because all the worry constantly is, what are we going to do with our other sports, our girls softball team, our swimming team? I think that money is going to go more towards being able to keep the other sports going. And I think the NIL is going to be what continues to drive the football program and things like that, which I don't mind. I think it's actually kind of, like you said, it's a little bit of a step in the right direction, because they're trying to look out for the other sports that aren't going to make that same kind of NIL money. But ultimately, the majority of all the money is going to the football team. But if we can find a way to let other athletes continue what they're doing, I think that that's a good solution.
Yeah. The other thing that I saw too, sorry, Bill, is that, I'm just curious, does this help the big blue blood programs that have the huge NIL war chest, or does it help the little guys more? Is this good for a group of 5 schools, et cetera? What I've heard or read is that it helps, like the rich are going to get richer in this thing. And what it should do in theory is make it harder for like the rogue individual multi-billionaire that wants to stroke $1 million checks left and right as an individual to support NIL for his university of choice, like the guy that wrote the check for Bryce Underwood at Michigan. It's supposed to police that kind of stuff. So that means that the schools that are in bigger urban centers and in bigger areas where they have more actual businesses that they can shoulder tap and say, hey, we're going to use NIL the way it was designed to happen in the first place. It should be advantageous to those universities. That's what they say on paper. I said before, I have very little confidence that that's actually going to be the net effect of this as people look for workarounds and ways to game the system.
Yeah, well,
et cetera.
and the weird thing to me is NIL in general is Miami has like a few thousand students. They're a private school, they're a private institution, but they manage to land massive prospects constantly. Arizona State has the largest alumni base in the United States, and yet they're terrible constantly. It doesn't make any sense. Michigan was kind of bad until they decided, okay, let's actually push a little bit of money into the NIL space. Like it's such a weird thing. So to me, I agree with you. The rich get richer, but what NIL has done is the pool of who's rich has gotten bigger, which I think is actually fascinating because in the past, Michigan wasn't a part of that. Like they were a blue blood, but they weren't a rich getting richer. It was Alabama, Ohio State, Georgia, Clemson, those schools. But now Michigan's in there, and now all of a sudden you start to see there's more schools that can actually compete in that space because they actually understand NIL and they're doing it well.
Well, and also during the flying under the news radar portion of the springtime came this little announcement from SEC Commissioner Greg Sankey that the SEC is planning to leave the NCAA in a couple of years. They're just going to secede from the union, do their own thing, which I think we've talked about before is happening. The Big Ten will probably do that same kind of thing, which is why I find this settlement to be especially interesting when you dig into some of the details. And I could be misinterpreting what I'm reading, but one of the caveats is under the enforcement arm part of this, that schools have an option to not follow this. They can opt out of the settlement terms, but they don't get any revenue share if they do.
Right.
Which to me feels like this is the NCAA's maybe their last ditch effort to maintain some degree of relevance in the sports world. I mean, those of us who appreciate the maize and blue in Ann Arbor already know they're trying their best to continue this Michigan story for the rest of my natural life. This kind of feels somewhat similar. Maybe that's incorrect, but it certainly feels that way when you have the SEC, where I believe it just matters more, if I understand correctly. If they're going to go off and do their own thing and go rogue, here's the NCAA having negotiated this settlement and having it approved now. I believe Congress stamped their approval on this, so I think this is where it's headed.
Yeah.
Now, if you're the SEC, do you walk away from $20 billion in revenue share for future athletes? That's going to be awfully difficult. So, yeah, Scott, I don't know what you take out of all this, but to me, I know the story is still to be written, but boy, there are a lot of little parts to this.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a casual college football fan. I didn't go to a Big Ten school, so I don't have as much interest. I love the competition of it. To me, it just seems like such a soap opera outside of it. And I don't know if to other people who are in my shoes, right, who just kind of enjoy it from time to time, it's beginning to just feel like a complete utter turnoff. Like, I'm not going to bother with this anymore. There's better things I can do. So if they're looking to bring in sort of fringe fans or grow the fan base for the sport overall, it's not helping me. I'm just becoming turned off by it. It's too, drama queens left and right, and I don't need any of this. It's baseball season. I'm perfectly happy. But to me, it seems like, there's going to be a seismic change somewhere when you've got one massive conference threatening to we're out. If that doesn't send a message, I don't know what does.
I think, Bill, on this podcast, we're going to have a conversation whenever the NCAA Michigan thing finally resolves. We're also going to have a conversation about the CFP format for next year, because I think your question about is the SEC really going to pack up and go home? I think the answer to that in great measure is related to whether or not they go to the 5-11 model with fewer automatic bids, or they do the 4-4-2-2-1 model or whatever it is. There's a whole conversation to be had right there. And guess what's driving all of the opinions? Money.
Yeah.
Go figure.
Shocker.
Go figure. Yeah.
By the way, for those of you who are thinking to yourselves, hey, wait a minute, it's early June. You guys are talking, we know you're trying to sneak in some football talk. Well, we have firm support in doing so from everybody's favorite ball coach.
Memorial Day's over. It's June now. It's time for football. Am I right?
That's Coach Harbaugh. He said Memorial Day's over. It's June now.
Time for
Time for football.
Memorial Day's over. It's June now. It's time for football. Am I right?
Yes, you are right, Coach. It's also time for holy discontent.
It's time to blow off some steam. Get it off your chest. Rant about what's most bothering you.
I got a lot of problems with you people. Now you're going to hear about it.
It's time for holy discontent.
Let's have David Collins lead things off. Here, we need speed on the base paths. So you're going to
Yes. So mine's a simple one. Mine is anybody that talks about ratings. Everybody's always like Indiana, Oklahoma City, 2 small market teams, bad rating. It's good basketball. You like sports or you don't like sports. You like basketball, you don't like basketball. You want to watch it, watch it. I'm tired of people constantly talking on Twitter, everything I see. Oh, but the ratings are going to be down. Who cares? I enjoyed it. Indiana went in there and got an amazing win on the last second. Tyrese Halliburton is like writing his new legacy. You don't want to watch it, don't watch it. But stop talking to me about the ratings. I'll hang up and listen.
First time listener, long time caller. Scott Holmgren, your holy discontent.
Yeah, mine's pretty simple too. On my MLB app, constantly, every time I log in, I don't know if it resets or whatever, it's always asking me to tap on my favorite players to follow. Look, I'm not interested in following players. They don't understand this segment of baseball fans. I have a team, and my team is what I follow. The players can come and go. A lot of times they are going to come and go at the aforementioned trade deadline. But for me, baseball is probably the least individual focused sport of the big four, simply because players only contribute so much, right? I mean, Aaron Judge is going to bat 1/9 of the time. Skubal is only going to pitch less than a quarter of the Tigers' games for the entire season. And I think Andy Ibanez coming off the bench might have the biggest plate appearance in any given game on any given night. So to keep me focused on having to identify, I want to follow this player all season long, is antithetical to and insulting to me as a baseball fan, because to me, it's about all 26 guys. It's about the entire team. The rate of failure is enormous. The rate of opportunity for each player is equally enormous. Stop making it about individuals. And I know that runs completely opposite to the marketing and branding that all the leagues want to do. They want to focus on the individuals, on the superstars. I'm sorry, that's not me. That's not the spirit of baseball for me.
That reminds me of Jerry Seinfeld had a whole bit about rooting for laundry.
Well, yes.
You know, if a guy's wearing your laundry, you're like, yeah. If he's wearing another team's laundry, it's like, boo.
Yeah,
I'm with you.
And
Tigers.
If I was Tony Reale and this was around the horn, probably 3 extra points for Scott using antithetical. Really good. Paul, your holy discontent.
It was really good. I just want to say that it's awesome when someone's holy discontent is right in the center of the bullseye of their passion as a sports fan. So well done, Scott. That was great. My holy discontent comes out of SEC Media Days, and I was fully expecting Greg Sankey to talk about how the SEC is the best conference in football. Check. I was fully expecting Kirby Smart and Steve Sarkisian and even Lane Kiffin, all the usual suspects, to go on there and talk about how the SEC is much, much better, deeper, stronger, faster, more important, matter more than every other conference in football. But Brian Kelly, really? So we were treated to Brian Kelly talking about this, and I think we have this clip.
We have the depth in this league from top to bottom, and that we are the premier league in the country.
But you could do that in the playoffs, then.
You can do it in the playoffs too. Absolutely.
Okay.
No doubt. But you can also show yourself during the regular season in this opportunity.
Sure.
All right.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so that reporter was doing a good thing. He's trying to call the SEC on, hey man, why don't you guys just show up in the playoffs and prove that you're better? Because they're grumbling about going from 8 games to 9 games. There's a whole conversation to be had about that. Here's all I want to say. In bowl season last year, the Big Ten head-to-head against the SEC, 5-1. You want to know which one of those games was the closest margin of victory? Missouri's 3-point win over Iowa. Missouri, who tied for 3rd in the SEC against Iowa, who tied for 5th in the Big Ten. If you show up and win, I'll give you Brian Kelly and the rest of the SEC slappies. I'll give you permission to talk about how great the SEC is. But the Big Ten was 5-1 against you last year.
I think the SEC might
You're
be
done.
a basketball conference.
I think they are.
My only discontent is just the lack of complete games anymore. I used to love watching a pitcher go all 9. David Collins is a baseball guy. Scott's a baseball guy. I'm going to give both of you a chance to guess at the total number of complete games that Nolan Ryan pitched in his career.
Got to be over 200. Go 272.
Yeah, I'll go 240.
222. His most famous, I'm going to give you another crack at something. What's the most pitches Nolan Ryan threw in a game?
Oh, wow.
Single game pitch count. Because right now, if
189.
I was going to go 143.
235.
Whoa.
June 14th, 1974. The game was against the Red Sox. He pitched 13 innings and struck out 19 batters. I understand that arms like that and durability like that doesn't come along even once a generation. Nolan is a freak of nature, and Robin Ventura still knows that very well. But excuse me, I'm so passionate I knocked my mic over. I'm just not a fan of your 6th inning guy, your 7th inning guy, your 8th inning guy, your 9th inning guy. I get it. Closers are important. It used to be, and we learned this a couple of weeks ago when Skubal had everything still left in the tank and they let him pitch 6 innings of a tight game and they took him out. Let your guys pitch a little bit. It's okay. They are athletes, and we're not suggesting that you throw them, 400 innings a year and do to them what the Tigers did to Mark Fidrich back in 1976. But these guys have a little more in the tank than you're giving them credit for. And I'm not a fan of the specialty pitching strategy. And maybe now, if my Tigers go and win a World Series, huge fan
of it.
Specialty.
Of course. I was just going to add that Nolan Ryan didn't get Tommy John. Tommy John got Nolan Ryan.
You are correct.
Right now, this minute, today, this week.
Right, it's our That Guy segment. Scott, we'll let you kick things off if you have something you'd like to throw in. If not, we'll go to David and see if you've got anything.
Yeah, Cubs, the entire Cubs team, they're my guy right now.
That was definitely a throw in.
The fact that they had the best record in the NL this year so far at this point in the season, no way did I see that coming. So they're all my guy at this point. Way to go, Craig Counsell.
David, do you have anything?
I do. First off, I want to say Craig Counsell's batting stance. What was that back in the day?
Very weird.
What was that? He's a much better coach than he was.
He was trying to catch lightning, I think. I don't know. That was bizarre. I agree.
Yeah. So that guy is simply this: hockey. Lord Stanley. You've got to be kidding me. These two teams are unbelievable. You have the 2 best players in the game with Draisaitl and McDavid going up against the best roster. You got Barkov, you got Kachuk, you got Bobrovsky's balling out. I watched both overtimes last night. Hockey is, and I'm saying this, I love all sports. I think the NFL is my favorite. Hockey playoffs is the best thing that there is in sports. You should get on the train because I love it, and these teams are worth your time to watch. Watch hockey. Hockey players are awesome. That's that guy.
Overtime is so intense.
It's intense.
Goodness, it's so intense. You cannot look away. Paul Miller, you're that guy.
Any sport that makes me root for Brad Marchand is doing something.
Exactly.
Right. Okay, so that guy harkens back to something you said a little bit ago, David. I'm giving a shout out to Scott Van Pelt. After game 1 of the NBA Finals, he had what was a fascinating conversation with Tyrese Halliburton, where he was essentially admitting that he didn't think much of him before the playoffs this year. And I just loved the exchange between the two of them.
The other night on the show, I put my hand up and I said, "Look, I was late to the party on it."
Yeah, you're a real one for that.
Well,
I heard that. You're a real one for that.
Well, but
a lot of your counterparts won't admit that now.
Well,
so
okay, now I'm going to give myself a little wiggle room here and say you guys are under 500 at Christmas. Am I right?
Yo, we were rough.
Okay,
we were rough.
So were you bad at the start?
We were. We were.
So all I said is I was a little late to the party,
For
but
sure,
I put my hand up.
We were late to the party too.
Oh.
We were late to the party too. I just love the exchange between Van Pelt and Halliburton. I don't know why ESPN only makes him like the late night host guy, because he's the best thing they got going, in my opinion. So
yeah, that is true. I'm going to continue. That guy's going to continue in the NBA category. First of all, the reason that Halliburton was talking to SVP was because of what he did to win game 1 at the buzzer. The only lead the Pacers had the entire game was with 0.3 seconds left in the contest. And my first that guy from the NBA world is the Korean play-by-play team calling that Halliburton shot. This is outstanding.
없이 가요. 자, 언더독인 인디애나가 익숙한 상황을 맞이한다. halliburton.
that's awesome. We need that in the bumper for this podcast.
We are going to keep that. And I would listen to that entire game from them before I will listen to 4 more minutes of Doris Burke. My other that guy is Ernie Johnson. So now that we're in the finals, TNT is all done. That same group is taking that show over to ESPN, where most of us anticipate the same thing happening to it that Sinclair does to everything it touches. We hope not. NBA on TNT, by far, my favorite thing in all of sports television. And in the final moments after the Eastern Conference Finals ended, and somewhere around midnight when they wrapped up their awesome post-game show, here's just a capsulized edition of what Ernie said that took him about 2.5 minutes. You'll hear it in about 30 seconds.
Take your time.
Several years ago, I wrote a book called Unscripted, and I asked people to embrace the unscripted, not fear the unscripted. If I had written the script, the NBA and TNT would be together forever. It's not going to happen. But while I was disappointed and I was sad, I was not bitter. We know how business works. Gratitude is the operative word for me. Grateful that, since 1989, I've been with this company. But I'm proud to say for the last time, thanks for watching us. The NBA on TNT.
Man.
Wow.
He's nothing but class. My favorite broadcaster in the realm of people who talk for a living. Ernie is the gold standard, for at least for me. And that was really powerful. So, Paul, normally to lead into the 3-minute message, we would play our funny little Simpsons moment. In honor of you and your dad, we're not going to do that this week. I'm just going to turn things over to you for the final thoughts of this episode.
Okay, yeah. Thank you, Bill. You mentioned at the beginning of this conversation that it had been a while since we had all been on the microphone together, and that's partially my fault because we were set to record a little over a week ago or whatever it's been. And I had to call and cancel last minute because my dad, who was 94 years old and had suffered a stroke about 6 weeks ago and had been struggling to recover from that stroke, he took a fall on Sunday morning and hit his head, and they were unable to operate on the brain bleed. And to not bore you with all details, my dad went home to be with Jesus late night Tuesday, early Wednesday morning. And I had a really interesting reaction to that. We knew it was coming. We had made the decision not to put my dad through the surgery for the brain bleed that he was dealing with. We had taken him off all of his meds and had brought in hospice and all the things. So we were fully in the process. But Bill, I sent you that text and was like, I'm really sorry, I can't record tonight. And then about 15 minutes later, I get a text from Scott Holmgren telling me he's praying for me. I get a text from David Collins telling me he's praying for me. And I have to say that this past week for me I've just been hit on all sides by brothers who have wanted to be there for me. I'm not really good at that. In fact, when I went into the office on Thursday, and my boss here in Minnesota at the national offices for the EFCA asked me if I was going to send out a notification to let the rest of our staff team know what had happened. I was like, yeah, I don't think so. I'm thinking all that's going to do is have 75 people come over and tell me they're praying for me and ask me how I'm doing, and I don't want to deal with that. So Scott sends the notification out anyways. Then I get a phone call from Randy Gilmer, who I wouldn't know if it weren't for this podcast. And he leaves me a voicemail saying, "Hey, brother, just want you to know I'm here, praying for you. And if you need to talk, give me a call." Right? So I just want to share a verse with all of us. Proverbs 17. 17 is pretty famous little Proverbs. A friend loves at all times, and a brother is born for a time of adversity. So sometimes people will ask me why we do this podcast, why we care and talk so much about sports. Well, one of the reasons, Bill, as you know, one of the reasons we do this is because of the brotherhood that comes from it, right? I get a chance to know David Collins or Randy Gilmer, and I never would otherwise. I get a chance to reconnect with Scott Holmgren, who's been a friend from like days gone by in my life, and now we're on different parts of the country, but we're reconnecting through our love of sports, right? And friends are there at all times, and brothers are born for adversity. So I just want to say to Randy Gilmer, who told me he's going to be listening, I just want to say, Randy, thank you for being a brother.
That's so good.
And I want to say to Scott, thank you for being a brother. I want to say to David, thank you for being a brother. I want to say to you, Bill, thank you for being a brother. We all need that kind of brotherhood, even if it makes us uncomfortable or feel vulnerable or feel soft. We all need that at times. So I don't know when that time is going to be for you if you're listening to this podcast, but I can look at the three guys that are with me on this call and say, hey, I'm here when you need me to be here. And that's how this thing works. And that's all I got.
Yeah. Being vulnerable is hard and it feels awkward sometimes, but I appreciate your words, man. It's hard to take sometimes, but it's necessary. And that's why we're doing this, you know?
Yeah.
Sports is kind of the thing that lets us be together. That's always kind of been it with me and my family and you guys. So I appreciate it, man. Appreciate you.
Yep.
Thank you, Paul. Yeah. Adversity comes, right? We all like to think it doesn't, or it won't, or somewhere further down the road, and then it happens. And that's when the Band of Brothers, as the title was, as Paul wrote about it, the love for one another is so essential and important. And it takes a lot of boldness. It takes a lot of freedom in Christ to be that authentic. So appreciate that, Paul. Love you.
Love you too, man.
There have been times when Paul and I have had texting or vocal conversations about this podcast, and we're not in the millions of downloads. We're not in the thousands of downloads. If we get a few hundred for an episode, it feels pretty cool, and the people are connecting. And yet, over the course of the last several months, as Paul has moved into the EFCA and has connected with these pastors all over the place and broadened the network of brothers, and as we, as the four of us get together, as Randy comes in, as Billy Walker comes in, as Josh Pardee sometimes comes in, as different folks pop in to join us on the show, I don't think anybody is engaged in this because we think it's going to go viral or somehow unseat the big boys atop the podcast heap. But I will say that we have something that they would greatly envy.
Yeah.
And that is the common bond that binds us together for all of eternity. So here we are now, we sit here a week before Father's Day. And Paul, I don't even want to pretend to imagine the emotions that you are going through and will go through. I don't know much about your dad, but I have to think that he was incredibly proud of his boy. And the way that we have seen you from a distance care for the family and care for him and do all these things that are not convenient when you're separated by states, it is a powerful reminder and an example of the love of a son for his father that all of us who still are fortunate enough to have our fathers need to remember. You know, my father's 85. So we would have to think that he's probably in the fourth quarter and maybe the 2-minute warning. So I find myself soaking in these examples, both the positive and those who I know who are not providing positive examples, and trying to learn from both of them. And I just want to thank you for setting an example that a man of God would set, and sharing that with us. And it was kind of interesting, you know, when we had to cancel last week and delay, and I think your note ended with "really sorry." I was like, you must be joking. I mean, this is not the to be sorry for. You know, it was me, you, and Scott, and we were like, oh, of course not. And for a moment, Scott and I texted and said, you think we should still do it? And we both said, no, there's no chance. Why? Because it would cost us listeners? Not likely. But because we needed you to be a part of this, and we still do. So, and David, thank you for setting aside some time and for reaching out to Paul, a guy I don't think ever met in person. Right? I mean,
did we meet at a Pistons game or something?
Maybe you met at a Tiger game or a Pistons
maybe
game.
we met at something, but yeah, no, we really haven't connected.
Yeah, it's these kind of things where the connective tissue of Church Pew Sports runs deeper than being in person with each other. A few weeks ago, Scott got in his car and drove over to my house, and we just spent a day together talking about podcasting and broadcasting. Scott and I don't really know each other that well. It was awesome. It was so cool. So
I just wanted to add randomly at 8:45 p.m. my dad texted me, "Hey, you all good?" And now I have to really think about how I'm going to respond to him because of all this conversation about fathers.
We got to get him on the show at some point too.
Oh, he would love that.
During football season, he has got to come in. Maybe we should well, we'll get down to that later on. Paul, thank you for sharing. And I don't care if the 3-minute message lasted 11 minutes. It's fine in everybody's book. And I hope
I just was going to say, I thought that you guys decided not to record last week because you needed my baseball acumen.
We did. We were lost without it. We didn't know what to do.
You're the Skubal of this podcast.
Well, for those of you who are still with us, thank you. I asked you to do that at the beginning, and now you know why. Thanks for listening. Check us out at churchpewsports.com. And please share the link to this podcast with other people in your world. And if nothing else, ask them to listen to the last 12 minutes. We'll see you next week.